So today we're speaking with Cliff Edwards, Director of Global Communications at Tron. Hi Cliff, it's so great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
We're actually in Tel Aviv at Market Across Offices, which is a marketing and growth service group for blockchain startups. So could you give us just a brief overview of Tron and maybe your role in it?
Yeah, so I'm Director of Global Communications at Tron. I joined in November as the company has been really trying to build out its base of seasoned executives, really sort of building out the team. We have added a Director of Compliance, we have a new Chief of Staff, we have new people running just about every major program at the company. And the idea behind Tron, initially it was a blockchain company, and Justin's vision was decentralize the internet. And that means a lot to different people, depending on who you ask. But really the basic idea is to return ownership and privacy back to people. Justin's main view is that a lot of the power now is in the hand of a few big companies and governments. Those big companies in his mind are, Facebook, Amazon, Google, people that own your data and that you can't really extract value back out of them. You put a lot in, but they get to keep it and profit off of it either through ads or different types of things.
We all share that kind of vision to decentralize everything. It's interesting because in the middle of 2018, Tron acquired BitTorrent, the peer-to-peer file transfer protocol and ecosystem with its 100 million active users. And we just wanted to know, could you share some insights in regards to the strategic thinking behind this acquisition and what you believe is the synergy between Tron and BitTorrent?
If you think about it, I don't know, do you guys have Reese's cups here? One of the big, slogans they used to have was "Two great tastes that taste great together."
Peanut butter and chocolate, of
right?
course, yeah.
And that's essentially what BitTorrent and Tron are. They both have very similar visions, which was that, again, power is in the hands of too many people, and that through things like peer-to-peer sharing and blockchain, you can really sort of have a democratized internet where it's self-policed by people and not by corporations and governments.
Okay, and what are your thoughts in regards to, when you thought about acquiring BitTorrent, was it like part of a strategic plan? Is it for the user acquisition? What was the strategic thinking behind this?
I think there's, the interesting thing, when you talk to Justin, founder and CEO of Tron, one of the things he really sort of thought about from a visionary sense was, hey, there's a lot of companies out here doing this stuff. A lot of people say, okay, Tron followed Ethereum's tracks or followed EOS tracks. And what you really should be thinking about is, how do you build a better mousetrap? And I always use the vision of Apple. Apple in a lot of ways never really innovated on creating something new, but they always looked at something. Steve Jobs had a great way of doing this, of looking at something and saying, how can I do this better? He'd look at a phone and say, look at this phone. How can I do this better? Let's work on this. And they'd win. And they also won not just because they built better hardware, but they had better software and they had a better ecosystem behind them. And if you think about the Tron BitTorrent vision, it's very much the exact same thing. It's really about combining the technology, blockchain technology, and tokens, utility tokens, behind a very strong user base, 100 million people. You automatically are tenfolding the amount of people that would then be interested in cryptocurrency, people who've never been exposed to that at all. And then you're helping, by having that big ecosystem, pull in more developers. So you're creating that same type of ecosystem that made Apple so successful. And that's really a sort of really interesting vision. Nobody else has tried to do this yet on this scale. And so it's really a grand vision, and we've got a long way to go before we see whether it works really well, but I think we're on the right track.
So this Reese's kind of cupcake is going, whatever.
Reese's, yeah. Reese's. Yeah.
It's going to actually perhaps that would be like the mass adoption phase that we're so looking forward in the crypto market, just looking at it from the outside saying, listen, this is an existing service. It needs to get upgraded. It needs to include more third-party developers to maybe increase the boundaries of the ecosystem, and Tron could maybe get a legitimacy factor. What was
Yeah, I mean,
Tron's
part of it is
involvement in
like,
it.
blockchain has been a technology looking for a use case, right? I
True.
mean, that's been the main problem with it. From the beginning, it was cryptocurrency and it was like just make money, and then people were like, but really the underlying thing was blockchain. We're talking about something that could really be revolutionary here. But then the problem with adoption with anything is you normally have to have enough people interested in it first before companies then start developing for that platform. And so it's that chicken and egg thing, like either like companies don't want to invest in something where there's nobody who's going to buy their stuff. And it's the same with developers. If you look at the App Store and you looked at Android, that was the same problem they had initially, was they were waiting to see whether people were going to buy the phones or their tablets. And then when they saw that, they're like, okay, we better hurry up and get aboard here. And this is the exact same problem that's happening in blockchain that we're trying to address at Tron.
So this is exactly leads to our next question, because in the midst of the crypto bear market, Tron is conducting an ICO for BitTorrent, which is actually planned to start in a few days. How challenging is it to conduct an ICO these days, even if you have such a strong brand such as BitTorrent behind it?
We're not actually calling it an ICO. We're calling it, Binance is calling it crowdfunding. That's what their launchpad technically is. I think, first of all, the ICO, that phrase has gotten a bad name, and for very good reasons. There's a lot of scammers out there, and a lot of people lost a lot of money following ICOs that had no use case. People were just doing it to make money and buying an island somewhere, and so there's a lack of trust in ICOs now. And what Binance is really trying to do with Launchpad is to show, hey, we're looking for companies that have actual business models, that have use cases that we think are going to be worth your time and money. And we're putting our effort behind this. We're putting our name behind them. It's sort of like almost a good housekeeping seal when you go with Binance now. They're saying we're choosing Launchpad partners that we think are going somewhere, and that's really what we're looking at. And the idea behind the crowdfunding for us is not actually to make money. It's really about, again, seeding that marketplace, because all these people initially are buying, you have to buy TRX or Binance, to get the BitTorrent. And that idea, again, is about, okay, building a community behind blockchain and utility tokens. These are people who've never before entered this market, a good chunk of these people. And it's sort of like being on the ground floor. And in this case, instead of being an ICO person where you're just like, oh, here I am helping, somebody get rich. It's like you're an investor now. You're actually starting to invest in a vision. And that's where the difference is between an ICO and crowdfunding. And I think it's a very important distinction for people to understand, because in this case, you're actually going to be owning something. You're going to be part of that whole BitTorrent community. And again, if that takes off, then you can extract value from that. And whereas you couldn't really with ICOs, you're just basically giving money away. And the value you were extracting was if you could resell at a different time, then maybe you made money, but for the majority of people, they lost money.
Well, we actually had a few ICOs on our previous shows, which were real businesses. But I agree with you that overall ICOs have made a bad name for themselves. But when you're looking at the crowd aspect of the crowdfunding of BitTorrent, is the crowd going to be like the existing users of BitTorrent? Or are you going to address them, the developers, the file sharing? Who are the people who are supposed to get excited about this?
I think all of the above.
Sale?
I think what we're seeing right now is TRX holders already are getting excited. If you sort of look at the price of TRX over the past couple of weeks since we announced token, BitTorrent token, I think you will see that is mainly the Tron investor community that's getting super excited. And part of that, again, was people were waiting to see what is Tron doing, and particularly what are they doing with BitTorrent. And people, again, are buying at least a vision that, okay, that's a vision that could work, so I'm going to buy into it early. I'm going to sort of get in on the ground floor. The BitTorrent users are going to get airdrops, so they're going to actually be seeded with free, currency. And this will help them sort of be like, okay, like, what do I do with this? How do I trade it? Really sort of getting to understand it. And that's part of the mechanism that we're working on right now, making sure people understand exactly what they can do with this stuff.
Yeah, it seems like an interesting challenge, and maybe the first one was such a big user base to actually onboard users who are used to some sort of a decentralized file storage and file sharing service was suddenly an incentive model, right? A monetization incentive model in the form of the token. So on the one hand, the users who were using this service for free, maybe they would need to pay for transaction fees and stuff like that. But then the developers or the file storage, the hosts themselves could suddenly. So how do you see that ecosystem come about with suddenly like an incentive, a true crypto incentive, crypto economics plan in place?
I think it works in two ways. I think initially, the idea is that you really sort of speed up the P2P protocol network. I mean, like that is sort of like the ground floor of this, where, okay, if I keep my computer open longer, then somebody's going to incentivize me by giving me tokens. And then like, what do I do with those tokens? There's things that I can do that we're building on top of that. Or you can, if you decide that you want to, exchange those for something else, for either TRX or other coins or just to cash out, you can do that. We're building that mechanism for you. But the idea really is to create, a more vibrant BitTorrent community. Because if you have a vibrant BitTorrent community, using utility tokens, there's many things that you can envision that can happen after that. Just one quick example is, imagine if you are a gamer and you were playing, what's the current game? Like, I haven't played game in a long time. What if you played EverQuest and you spent $200 leveling up? You played that game and you played it and you played it and you played it, and after a year and a half you're sick of playing it. You're done, you're out. That was $200 you spent that you can't reuse. Now imagine a world where it's decentralized, that game is on our system, and you have $200 worth of leveled up items. You can resell those. That's a secondary market, and you can even have a tertiary market. Like, I've got my super duper sword that I spent, 10 tokens on. It's supply and demand. There were only 10 of those swords available. The developer made that, so then you can resell it for 30 tokens or 50 tokens, it depends. And so that's where the user actually gets value back. Whereas before, this is again part of that whole decentralized thing, where before you're giving value to developers and big studios and whoever, and you're never able to extract that back. And so it's almost like an eBay type system, that you could envision as just one use case. And there's tons more that we're thinking.
Yeah, it's very ambitious, because when we're looking at Gifto, for example, they did a token for live streamers. And when you look at Golem, for example, then they had a token for sharing your CPU. So I'm wondering whether, BitTorrent and Tron are, they're large and they're on Binance Launchpad and everything. So this should be like a big go-to-market plan of saying we're here to stay and we want to make something, an ecosystem that will really onboard in the mass.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's saying, hey, we're here and we're going big. I mean, like, this isn't like, some harebrained scheme. This was actually thought through. We were trying to be thoughtful about how we approach every part of the ecosystem, whether that's current holders, whether it's people who want to join, whether it's developers, or whether it's just the average user who doesn't know anything at all about this market.
So you mentioned this earlier, that BitTorrent's crowd sale is going to be conducted on Binance's Launchpad. Could you share some information in regards to the nature of the collaboration between Binance and between Tron?
Yeah, I think the deal came together very quickly. I think, once we sort of outlined the vision to Binance, they really, you'd probably have to ask them, but I think they really felt like, we do have a plan. And they really wanted to make sure Launchpad came back in a big way this year. If you read their press release, they said they're going to be having like an announcement, I think, every month or something of partners. And that's really them looking to say, okay, who are the people out there that we think may have legs, you know, and we want to put our seal of approval behind those companies to show that we are also trying to build trust and legitimacy to the market. So I think what you're starting to see, and I think Justin mentioned this in some of his 2019 predictions, is that a lot of companies out there are really trying to sort of build that trust back into the market, you know, and help people understand that crypto and blockchain isn't just about getting rich quick. That there's a long haul, and there's a process behind sort of ramping into everything, starting with things like games and going into finance and health and all of these things that people are talking about with blockchain.
So the BTT token is structured to integrate with BitTorrent's existing service. How do you estimate the impact on the existing community once there's like a monetary incentive that kicks in?
I think it will be good for people. I think people will embrace the idea. I mean, reward systems are always very popular. I mean, like, you know, there will be sort of the power users who are going to be like, okay, I want to collect as much as I can, and who are going to really sort of help boost the market. With 100 million people, that could be a very, very large number. That's always been the problem when other people have tried this, is that they just haven't had that large a community. It's, you know, again, we're not reinventing the wheel. We're saying, how do we build a better mousetrap? And a better mousetrap is you have this built-in base of 100 million active users and 1 billion people who have, you know, the BitTorrent client on their machines. You know, so there's a base of potentially 1 billion people. You know, we're being conservative in saying 100 million. And those people really have the opportunity, like I said, to do a lot more with it beyond not just sort of helping speed the market and helping seed and all this stuff, all the sort of typical stuff that has happened with BitTorrent, but to sort of look at the things that are coming. I think Justin announced something that we're looking at called sort of a live chat, sort of Snapchat-like application that also could be added to the whole tokenized utility system. And that's something that we're testing now that may roll out this year. So again, there's like a roadmap of things that, you know, BitTorrent people aren't used to seeing, you know, like seeing, you know, things that have been tried under BitTorrent but didn't work because they didn't have the scale. And now when you add blockchain, you bring scale that you didn't have before, and the incentives from the token.
So it's an existing user base, but with upgraded features and technology in order to boost the ecosystem once again with the third-party developers and everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, you know, sort of outfitting a Ford to look like a Tesla. You know, I mean, you're really sort of like, you know, throwing on a lot of technology and gear that sort of really shines it up. You know, and it will cause more people to look at BitTorrent, you know, in particular, people who've sort of moved away from BitTorrent. One thing that we haven't talked about, you know, that there was a really interesting article I read recently that sort of pointed to the whole sort of people getting sick of all the walled gardens just in entertainment, right? Like if you look at like, for a long time, Netflix was like the really fun place to go because you could get most of the stuff you wanted to watch. And I was director of communications at Netflix years ago, so I knew that. It was really fun to be that company because we were the ones that were sort of tearing down the walls at all the other media outlets. And what have the media outlets done now? They basically are building their own streaming services that are creating sort of, again, you have to buy 5 different subscriptions if you want to watch all the content you want to watch. And so if you think about a decentralized system that uses BitTorrent and utility tokens, a lot of players can come in and say, hey, maybe I just want to work with them instead of building my own streaming service. And I can sort of combine all of that content that they get, sort of, you know, is it a Netflix killer? Who knows? That's something that is way, way out and down the line, but it's something that one can envision for a whole decentralized internet.
And just a final question in regards to Tron's vision about BitTorrent post-ICO, and also Tron's vision in general in the upcoming years.
Yeah, I think if you talk to Justin, his vision is to, you know, I think he just was recently quoted saying that we wanted to be the #1 household name for blockchain. You know, that's a long-term vision, right? You know, this year he's really got his eyes set on, okay, we need to, like, you know, pass Ethereum and EOS. You know, like if you hear him talk, he'll talk a lot about that. because those are the two closest competitors thinking about what we're trying to do. You know, I think the long-term vision again is hey, can we take on the Amazons and Facebooks and Netflixes and all of these folks in the world who are creating these sort of very closed ecosystems and really sort of forcing people to sort of have to cherry pick where they find content. You know, and that, you know, the original vision of the internet was to be able to find content very freely and openly. And the business model came in where it said, okay, it's much easier to curate content. And that's what we called it at Netflix, curated content. And there's some benefits to that. The benefits are obviously like you didn't get, you know, spam and viruses and stuff like that. But you lose a lot in that too. And people should be able to have a choice. And I think that's something that has become less and less talked about over the past few years, and something that I think is really part of the shared vision of BitTorrent and Tron, at least to build that conversation in. You know, some people will choose the walled gardens, and that's perfectly fine. And some people will say, hey, I want that decentralized method, and that's fine too. And there's room for both, I think.
So I hope that, you know, in the upcoming months, we'll have a true use case that we can, you know, speak about on all the stages each time. They, well, what is the use case for blockchain? So I hope that BitTorrent will be the use case that we'll talk about. And I wish you and Tron the best of luck.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think we'll look back at 2019 and see whether this really was the year that blockchain sort of gets out of the blocks, as we say in the racing business. Yeah. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.